Hi, Georgetown. I'm your City ADA Coordinator, Louis Alone, and I want to personally thank you for joining us for this important topic, the city's ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. Ensuring all our city programs and services are accessible is critical to maintaining our thriving community. As we go through the process of evaluating our sidewalks, parks, website, public meetings, and more, we want to make sure you are involved. We're striving not just for compliance, but for understanding the real needs and priorities of our residents. We built this presentation to explain the process, how you can help us meet your needs, and what we have found so far. I'm going to hand it over to our partners, AIP, to go into more detail. Please stick around till the end and make sure you share your feedback with us through the survey, Facebook, or if helpful, a phone call or email.
Thank you, Lua, for the introduction. My name is David Butkus with Access Innovation Partners. Today's presentation provides an update on the City of Georgetown's ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. This is an important project for the city, both from a regulatory perspective and from a customer service standpoint. Our goals today are to walk through why the city is undertaking this update, what the self-evaluation has found so far across facilities, parks, trails, right-of-way, digital platforms, and operational policies, and how this information will feed into the ADA transition plan. We'll also share how you can provide your input, because community feedback, especially from individuals with disabilities, is an essential part of this process. I will now turn my camera off so that we can dedicate more screen space to the presentation. The purpose for today's presentation is fourfold. First, we want to explain the background and the project drivers. What is prompting this ADA plan update, and why is the city doing it now? Second, we'll share a high-level summary of findings from the self-evaluation effort. We'll talk about what was evaluated, what type of issues were found, and how those issues are prioritized, and what that means for accessibility throughout the city. Third, we'll walk through the next steps in the planning process and how the city will take this information and turn it into a structured transition plan. And finally, we'll outline how you can provide feedback. Your input will help shape the city's remediation priorities and guide future improvements. So what are the project drivers? There are several key federal laws that shape the city's responsibility when it comes to accessibility. These laws don't operate in isolation. They overlap and reinforce one another. The Architectural Barrier Act of 1968 was one of the earliest federal laws establishing accessibility standards for federally funded facilities. This was followed by the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and specifically Section 504, which requires recipients of federal funds to ensure non-discrimination on the basis of disability. For the City of Georgetown, this applies because the city receives federal funds. Then, the most comprehensive legislation came with the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, which prohibits discrimination and sets accessibility requirements across employment, public entities, public accommodations, telecommunications, and more. Georgetown falls under Title II, which applies to state and local governments and requires the city to ensure that programs, services, and activities are accessible to individuals with disabilities. These three laws together create the foundation for the ADA self-evaluation and transition plan requirement. They also guide how the city designs, maintains, and operates facilities, sidewalks, digital tools, and public programs. As a public entity and a recipient of federal funding, the City of Georgetown is required to ensure equal access to programs, services, and activities under these three key pieces of legislation. The Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and Title II of the ADA. In addition, the Texas Department of Transportation plays an oversight role. Because TxDOT distributes federal transportation funds to local governments like Georgetown, they must ensure that subrecipients are meeting civil rights and ADA requirements. This means the city must also demonstrate compliance through TxDOT's monitoring process. Together, these requirements form the legal and operational framework for this ADA planned update. Under Title II of the ADA, every public agency must conduct a self-evaluation. This is a structured, systematic review of how programs and services are delivered, whether public facilities and infrastructure are accessible, whether digital tools such as websites and applications are usable by individuals with disabilities, and whether internal policies support accessible operations. The self-evaluation identifies any barriers or non-compliant conditions. Then, the city must develop a transition plan, which is essentially a roadmap for correcting those barriers. The transition plan must include a list of these identified issues, a schedule for remediation, and critically, public input. Beyond legal obligations, accessibility is a core part of delivering good customer service. When we look at the population level data, we see the scope of the need. Nationally, roughly 1 in 4 adults have some type of disability. In Texas, depending on the data set and the definitions used, percentages range from 12.7% to nearly 29%. Local Georgetown census data suggests around 15.8%, but that number is likely underreported due to this community is often self-identified, and some individuals may not recognize themselves as an individual with a disability. We also know the population is aging rapidly. As age increases, the likelihood of having a mobility, vision, hearing, or cognitive disability increases as well. Georgetown is growing, and ensuring that facilities and programs remain accessible is an important part of supporting that change. The city's existing ADA self-evaluation and transition plan was completed in 2016, following audits of facility parks and sidewalks between 2014 and 2015. Since then, Georgetown has completed multiple capital improvement projects, including improvements to the downtown square, expanded its inventory of facilities and parks, and seen significant growth in its population and service offerings. Because of this, and because communities evolve over time, including new amenities opening, existing ones being renovated, digital services expanding, it is necessary to revisit the self-evaluation periodically. This ensures the transition plan stays current, reflects the actual built environment we see today, and aligns with the city's capital planning and operational priorities. So let's take a look at the summary of findings. During this phase of the self-evaluation, the project team assessed a broad cross-section of city assets. These assets and sites were not selected at random. Each one was chosen intentionally based on several factors, including high public use, upcoming capital or maintenance projects, and the need for targeted operational evaluation in certain areas. This approach helps ensure that the evaluation captures locations where accessibility has the greatest day-to-day impact on residents and visitors, and where the finding can most effectively guide near-term improvements. In total, this phase included 21 facilities, representing a mix of civic buildings, customer service locations, and operational sites, 15 parks, particularly those with high visitation or significant planned improvements, 4 trail systems selected for both usage patterns and connectivity across the network, 5 areas within the public right-of-way were reviewed as part of a focused spot inspection effort, and 11 web pages and 17 digital applications chosen based off traffic volume and service importance, and a review of policies and procedures evaluated through staff surveys covering managers, frontline staff, and public safety personnel. Together, these components provide a representative, high-impact view of how residents interact with the city, physically, digitally, and operationally, and help ensure the transition plan is grounded in real-world conditions and service priorities. On this slide is a list of the specific sites included in the evaluation cycle for facilities, parks, and trails. The city will also publish this PowerPoint as an accessible PDF so users who rely on assistive technologies can explore the locations in detail as well. These sites represent places where people engage with the city services every day, so evaluating them thoroughly was essential. Federal guidance provides a standardized way for prioritizing barrier removal. The priorities are based on impact to accessibility and services. Priority 1 is access to the site, barriers that prevent someone from entering or reaching a facility. Priority 2 is access to goods and services. These are barriers that prevent access once inside the site. Priority 3 is restrooms, and these are issues that affect usability within restrooms. Priority 4 is other elements. These issues are generally drinking fountains or vending machines. During this evaluation, the majority of issues identified fell within Priority 2, meaning they relate to accessing the services within a site. Priority 1 issues, which are those that block entry, are less frequent but critically important. Costs shown here are planning level estimates only. The actual transition plan will refine these costs, prioritize barriers, and align remediation schedules with capital planning and operational needs. We'll now take a look at some common findings by priority level. For priority level 1, we're looking at entry and exterior access. Common issues included missing accessible parking signage or incorrect striping, gaps within accessible routes that were greater than 1 inch, excessive cross slope within accessible routes, which would be greater than 2% on paths leading to the entrances, insufficient maneuvering space at doors or excessive slope in that maneuvering space, and gates or doors lacking the required smooth surface at the bottom of that gate or door. These issues are significant because they can prevent a person from entering the site altogether. It's important to note, though, that even though these issues may be significant in terms of their impact to accessibility, that doesn't necessarily mean they are difficult to address or costly. Common findings for priority level 2, which is that access to goods and services. Examples include missing accessible routes to amenities such as benches, picnic tables, or play areas, playground surfacing that does not provide a firm, stable, and slip-resistant surface, or ramps with landings that are too small or not level. These issues limit a person's ability to participate in the activities or services provided at a site. Common findings for priority level 3, restrooms, were missing or non-compliant door hardware, exposed pipes under sinks that need installation or covering, obstructions for the clear floor space underneath a sink or lavatory, and grab bars installed in incorrect locations or at incorrect lengths. Common findings for priority level 4 include drinking fountains that are either mounted too low or don't provide the required knee clearance for a chair user to pull up underneath that drinking fountain, or fountains provided only at one height. They don't have both the high and low water drinking fountain that is required by the standards. Now, although these are lower priority items, they still impact usability. The right-of-way spot inspections, part of the evaluation, looked at recently constructed sidewalks, curb ramps, pedestrian push-button signals, and related elements to understand how current construction practices are performing. Most of the findings here were in the medium or low severity categories. It's important to distinguish between technically non-compliant and true usability barriers. For example, a cross slope of 2.1% is technically non-compliant, And when we say cross slope, what we mean is the slope of a walkway that is not parallel with the direction of travel, but perpendicular. But it does not typically create a meaningful usability barrier. The severity scale we used here helps the city understand which issues affect usability and which simply require refinement of construction practices. This information will be combined with the city's existing sidewalk and right-of-way data, including the sidewalk master plan, to guide prioritization. Digital accessibility is evaluated differently because the set of standards here come from the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. Now, what you see on screen here are the web pages, digital applications, and one document that was reviewed for accessibility as a part of this project. The team conducted manual code reviews, screen reader testing, and keyboard navigation testing to identify non-compliant features within the digital space. On this page, we again have a high, medium, or low severity scale to represent how impactful these barriers or non-compliant features are in the usability of a website or a digital application. High priority issues result in a complete or near complete loss of content or understanding for some people. And a higher priority was given to lost content that is directly related to the service or services provided by a site. Medium priority issues result in some loss of content or understanding, increased time required to understand, or content that is less directly related to services. Low priority issues or barriers do not create a loss of meaningful content, but often relate to nuisances or increased time to understand content. Common findings included low color contrast, which can make text difficult to read for users with low vision. We have an example of that being shown here on the slide where there's a dark green text on a red background, which represents poor contrast. And then we have good contrast represented by white text on a red background. Other common findings included missing alternative text for images or icons, which prevent screen reader users from understanding content, and keyboard navigation issues that prevent users who cannot operate a mouse from accessing features. Any issues identified for third-party applications as a part of this process, the city will be working with vendors to correct those. Instead of reviewing policies in isolation, the project team used a staff survey to understand how well employees understand and apply accessibility-related procedures. Surveys were distributed to managers and directors, frontline staff, and fire, police, Office of Emergency Management personnel. The findings from the staff survey, which is how the policies and procedures were evaluated for this project, will help shape staff training, departmental procedures, customer service practices, and future policy updates. This operational lens helps ensure that accessibility is built into day-to-day service delivery. Each data set, facilities, parks, trails, right-of-way, digital, and operational, has its own baseline of prioritization relative to the issues identified or non-compliant items identified. But this is just a starting point. City staff are now reviewing these priorities through a pragmatic lens. Which barriers have the greatest impact on residents? Which facilities serve the highest number of people? Where can remediation align with upcoming capital projects? And importantly, how does community feedback shape what gets addressed first? This ensures the transition plan reflects both technical standards and community needs. So what are the next steps of the project? To ensure this critical aspect of the project, public outreach, is successful, the city has identified local disability advocacy and community-based organizations and is conducting targeted outreach to ensure their members are aware of this opportunity. The city is also promoting the outreach period online through social media with the goal of reaching as many residents as possible, especially those who rely on accessible services. We are currently in the first public outreach window, and we need your feedback. This summary of findings presentation will remain online throughout a 30-day public comment period. Questions submitted during this period through the survey will be summarized and addressed in an FAQ document that will be posted publicly on the city's ADA page. During this period, the city is asking residents to submit their feedback using this online survey linked on the slide. You can access the survey by scanning the QR code displayed now or by going to https://forms.office.com/r as in Romeo /F as in Frank, D as in Delta, T as in Tango, M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, J as in Joker, H as in Hotel, E as in Echo, X as in X-ray, N as in Nancy. Anyone needing assistance or an alternative format can contact the city's ADA coordinator, Louis Alone, at ada@georgetowntexas.gov or by calling 512-930-6574. Once the public comment period closes, the project team will finalize the ADA transition report. The final report will include the self-evaluation methodology, the findings, an outreach summary, a schedule for barrier remediation, and strategies to improve accessibility across the city. The plan will be going to City Council for adoption on February 24th of next year. After the updated transition plan is adopted, it will be posted online for a second public feedback opportunity and will remain available for at least 3 years. The city intends to update the plan regularly as barriers are removed and as new facilities, parks, and digital services come online. So please continue to provide your feedback over time. On behalf of the City of Georgetown and the project team, thank you for your time and attention today. Your feedback is an essential part of the ADA planning process and will help the city create a transition plan that is clear, effective, and responsive to the needs of the community. We encourage you to complete the public survey and share this opportunity with others who may benefit from participating. Thank you again for being here and contributing to this important